Hiya, it's the end of the second week of Acts of Every Day, and this is kind of a roundup, I guess, of everything that I've been doing in the last week. Even though it feels like I've not done a great deal of stuff, I've posted an awful lot on my Tumblr and written on Twitter for the first time, so I suppose I've done a fair bit. It certainly was a bit of a shocker when it got to about Wednesday and I literally crashed because I was just so shattered. I also want to talk about the kind of books and sources that I've been looking at as a kind of basis for the entire project. I just looked at the amount of books and sources that I've used so far and what I'll probably end up using for my portfolio. Books alone, I'm currently up to about 25. These are all books that I've read or have looked at some point or another. So the three kind of books that have been a major help this week in particular, because I've been looking at moving on to sort of like the next environment that I wanted to look at before I started doing performances, which was the route between my flat and the moor, which is an area where I'm hopefully going to be performing. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out was the fact that I did not at any point think that the route itself would become any kind of performative help to me at all. You can probably tell if you've seen my Tumblr blogs already, a lot of what I saw and what I experienced on the way to the moor was very visual and very sort of audio connected. I really should actually, I am going to post those audio clips that I have been taking from the space and the route on route. Hopefully I'll put some kind of video together at some point where I'll use the sounds and the scores that I made up along the way, but I haven't posted a lot of them yet for whatever reason. They're just not there yet, so I will get on to that. So firstly is A Mist Guide to Anywhere by Rites and Sights. This is by one of my lecturers actually, and was like my Bible when I was doing site specific last year. So it talks about drifting and sort of like taking note of particular objects and particular like sensory things. You become very sensory. You become very aware of your senses when you're doing this performance task, drifting, and it kind of encourages you to pick up sights and sounds and things associated with a particular site. So I firstly did a lot of going to these places, and with what I remembered from the last time I did a drift, and then because I couldn't remember exactly what I was meant to do, I went back to this book and was like, okay, well, I remember what I'm doing now. So a lot of it was about particularly picking up on visuals and sight, and a lot of it was picking up on sounds and sights and all the sort of things, all the things that kind of happen in a particular site, in a particular route. So that has been a nice little help. Even, you know, it's very much a visual kind of, I mean, look at that. It's mostly a visual kind of aid, to be honest. But, you know, it gives sort of like little tidbits to the kind of thing that I wanted to have a look at. The book, which is by the same theatre company, was A Sardine Street Box of Tricks. It's a mouthful to say. And it is by Rites and Sights, but they're known as Crabman and Signpost, who is Phil Smith, and Simon Persigetti, who is my lecturer. This was more specifically about a street site-specific performance that they did, and it kind of went over the course of about 3 years as opposed to one, which was how long it was planned to do. And just sort of reading back over it, I remember thinking to myself when I started doing the drifts and going back and forth between a place every single day, I forgot how long drifts can take and how, like, just how much energy it can take for you to actually be able to do a drift and not want to just give up on yourself, sort of thing. So I combined it with Goat Island's Impossible Tasks. So, for example, there's a task which is return to a place every day at the same time and note how the place changes. Which actually was quite a good way to mix the two, actually. I didn't go for an entire week. I went for about 4 days to the same place, just because there was enough in the small space of time that I went that Actually, I didn't think I needed to go for an entire week, or it just ended up being that I didn't go for an entire week. But I got so many visuals and kind of, you know, things that I found really helpful. A term that is used in this book that I've not used or I've not looked at since I did Site Specific last year, I've not heard a term that was used in this book, and it boggled me last year, and it still boggles me now, but it's a really nice term. I'm going to stop waving the book around now, so yeah. The term that I wanted to use, which I've looked at before, is mythogeography. It's a really weird concept to get your head around. There is actually a kind of description as to what it is. It really would help me if I actually just like marked these pages before I started filming a video, wouldn't it? The Mythogeography Manifesto in the book itself. This is again by one of the same people who did the other two books that I've now chucked on my bed. So Phil Smith has been involved in writing this book as well, and the very first manifesto that it has is: mythogeography is an experimental approach to the site of performance in the very broadest everyday sense as a space of multiple layers. Now, what it means by that, in my frame of thinking, is that if you walk down a street, if you go down any kind of site or space, there are many different layers that make up what that place is. So, for example, excuse me, the site that I went to, or the space that I went to, to anyone else looks like just a pathway, but you've got to remember that. But one of the things that I came across was that nature plays a very big role in changing what the space looks like, as well as that there are some man-made changes that have been made to the site itself. One of the things I noticed was that there was a kind of ritual of the Trago forklifts going up and down that road all day, every day, and it doesn't matter what day of the week I go on, they're always doing something down that road. I even looked at the site that I will hopefully be using for performance at some point, and everything that is associated with the moor has got a lot of connotations for me as well. One of the things that I found when I was in that site was I remembered performances that I've done there before, or things that I thought of performances that I've done there before. I was on the moor when I was doing the St. Piran's Day parade the kind of ritual that I had embedded with the moor, which was every night out that I went out with a particular group of friends from about a certain distance back, from about the Irish Bar, or what used to be Nancy's. We used to run from there to the bus stop to catch the last bus, and whoever was last was the loser, or would probably pay whoever didn't have their bus fare to get back. Sort of a ritual, a kind of playing game sort of thing that would happen every time we went out with these people. And it would only ever happen with this particular group of people that I went out with, and God only knows why we still do it. You know, we're all 20, 21 years old and we still play that game. However, I was always the one who lost because I was always the slowest person. Fantastic. Another couple of books I wanted to look at that I've been using as kind of my bread and butter has been The Practice of Everyday Life, and I've also got The Practice of Everyday Life, Volume 2, Living and Cooking, which I'm yet to start reading, but it's by the same person, so it's the same kind of practice, and I will get to look at that one a lot more. But this has kind of been my bread and butter in terms of thinking anthropologically about what an everyday space is to a person, and what home is to a person, how it can be used in terms of performance. Yes, this week was mostly about mythogeography and drifting, and how I'm going to move on to, and sort of slowly creeping myself into the idea of doing a performance. And next week is half going to be a continuing of that, and becoming more aware of the space that I'm going to be eventually performing in. And if I'm brave enough to, And if everything goes to plan, if all the logistics go to plan, I might even manage to get a performance up and done by the end of next week, or at least I will be performing a performance task in that space that maybe to the audience will look like a performance, but that in itself will be quite a nice thing to look at as to whether they think it's a performance or not.